Hey, everybody. Welcome to our weekly EPM Empower Hour Live. We have a great guest that I do have the privilege of knowing quite well with some of the work that we've been done. She is, and I will say, a very great addition to the MBA Future Leaders Program. I had a lot of fun working with her last year, and a funny story, if you guys were on earlier, you got to hear, but she comes from a very long, distinguished background. She does have her CMB in the industry. She is a person that is big into the outdoors. What I just discovered earlier on this call is that we are both live in Colorado, and I did not know that. But as you can see, I am not a skier, an avid outdoor person, unless it's a beach. That's just in my bloodstream, in my genetic code, and it's okay, but I do like playing in the snow. But she has taught leadership coaching, a very distinguished. I would recommend everybody looks at her background. She's going to be giving you guys so much great feedback. And I can already tell you from what I know, and the cool part about it when you do these intros is when you really know some of the work that they do. I think that's what really buys into the situation and shows it. But I saw just the next level of dynamics that she did in the Future Leaders, and a lot of the things that I've seen those people afterwards done because I was a panelist. So without further ado, I know we had some technical difficulties that hopefully stop next week. But without further ado, Bronwyn, if you could please take the stage. Suha and Leora, you'll be doing your things. But thank you so much for your time and greatly appreciate you here.
I am so honored to be here, Eddie. Thank you for creating this platform for not just your company, but everyone beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, welcome, Bronwyn. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic.
You look it.
I love this.
Well, I'm going to kick it off by actually asking you to tell us the tagline of this Empower Hour says, "Are you thinking above the line?" So why don't we jump right in and you can tell us what you mean by that.
Great. That sounds great. First, I want to share with everyone, not only am I honored to be here, and I love what you guys are doing, like bringing this conversation and topic to a lot of people in the industry, not just in your organization. It's open, which is beautiful. I want to encourage people today to really take this time that we have together, this short hour or less than an hour, to just set aside everything, all the distractions, anything you might be working on, projects, just put it aside. This time is for you. You guys have created this platform for everyone. And maybe grab up just a pen, a piece of paper so you can jot down some notes. But I'm going to touch on something that's one of my absolute favorite topics, one of the concepts that I share. And there's a big framework behind it. So I'm really just going to be kind of highlighting and doing a high level overview to it. But it's something that I really got a taste of when I was 16 years old. And I'll share how this actually came to me and has grown in my life and been something that I love to share, which is, and I'll just be pretty honest and vulnerable here. When I was 16 years old, my mom and dad had just gotten divorced. And so my dad moved out, and then my mom left because she was in rehab. So I was living alone with my 20-year-old brother at the time, and it was really challenging. And I was not doing well in school at all. And I remember I went to swim practice one day, and I had a huge paper due the next day. It was like half my grade. And my coach at the time, his name was Doug Rowe, he could tell something was wrong. And he said, "You know what, Bronny, what's going up?" My nickname is Bronny. And I said, "I'm really struggling. I have a huge paper due tomorrow. I feel like I'm going to flunk it. And I don't know what to do. Like, this is a huge problem." And I'm like frozen. And I started to cry. And he was so great because he really just said to me these words that I'll never, ever forget. He said, "Bronny, when there's a problem, there's always a solution. When there's a problem, there's always a solution. But if you focus on the problem, you're never going to see the solution. Let's turn it around and start thinking about this in a different way. And I will help you." So he literally, after swim practice that day, went to my house and stayed up with me till like, I think 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. This is like when we're typing on the old typewriter. And he literally helped me write this paper all night long and helped me really see that I could, if I started coming from a different perspective, right? This was the realization at age 16. If I could perceive this situation in a different way, then I would be able to not see it as a challenge or a problem, but look from a different perspective and start to find solutions. Mm-hmm. And so thinking above the line is just that. Like it's for us to give us a quick framework of how do we start to slow it down enough to pause and say, okay, where am I coming at this situation or this challenge or this problem from? Am I coming from below the line, which is like, I want to say fear-based thinking, where something's wrong? And when we do that, literally physiologically in our body, our brain starts to produce cortisol. We start to shunt blood away from our brain into our arms because we're in flight or flight mode. And we are not functioning, right? We're not thinking clearly. And so we want to just quickly be able to get out of that, which is a reaction, into a response to the situation. So that's a long-winded way for me to share. And I'll love to have you guys just ask me questions and pick my brain on that, because it can be really, really powerful. And this is what I work with a lot of my clients on, and the groups that I do, and all my programs, because if we can shift the way that we're approaching something, it can make all the difference in the world.
So I do have I have many questions. So the first thing I thought of is, so when you find so first of all, how do you train yourself to know that you're in that place, that you're below the line, that you're thinking below the line, and you're thinking with fear, and you're thinking from that fight or flight place? And then number two, once you are cognizant of where you are in your headspace, what are some of those tips that you use to get yourself above the line, thinking above the line?
Yeah, such great questions. So let me share a little more about the above the line piece, because I've talked a lot about the below the line, right? The below the line is a quick way for you to think about it, for people to kind of visualize it, because a lot of people are visual. Is below the line is like Darth Vader. I do speeches and I have a picture of Darth Vader, like Darth Vader, scary, dark, like, you know, below the line, trying to be a lot of fear, creates a lot of fear. And then above the line is Yoda. Above the line is like intuitive thinking, collaboration, solution-oriented, big picture vision, right? Like, you know, when Eddie was talking earlier, he really comes from a place of like, and even this platform you guys have created, like, what's the bigger vision outside of even equity prime mortgage? Like, that we can share this with everyone in the industry and have everyone start to, you know, get knowledge from each other and share in this platform. It's magic. So the above the line is that more solution oriented, collaborative, intuitive thinking. And what we can do to quickly be able to ask ourselves, where am I in this situation? I'll share an example, and I'll ask you guys to share an example too, because I want to hear, is we need to pause, right? We need to just take a quick pause, especially when we notice like we feel stuck or like anxious. There's a physical feeling, like I'm a very kinesthetic person, so I physically can feel when my body goes there. I start to get like tight everywhere, and I'm not breathing all the way, which doesn't help my brain function either. But other people might notice it in a different way. And I'll share a couple things that could be a clue for if you notice that you're below the line. And that's the language that we use inside our heads and outside. So some of the words might sound like, I can't, won't, it's not possible, I have to, it's unfair, I'm swamped. Does anyone hear somebody saying I'm swamped lately? I'm so busy, I'm swamped, you know? why does it always happen this way? They did it, she did it, he did it, blaming other people. I'll try is kind of like, So when you notice like those words coming out of your mouth, you'd be like, uh-oh, where am I coming from, right? And then there's a whole bunch of work that I do with the people that I work with around how do you get more clear about when it's happening in the moment, and then how do you switch that around. And we can have this kind of above the line, below the line thinking toward anything, towards projects we're working on at work or people at work. It could be even our own health and well-being. Like if somebody's like, I want to lose 20 pounds, but then they fall off the wagon and they're not taking care of themselves, then they can be really hard on themselves. See, I can't do it. I suck, or whatever they might say themselves. And so we do that all the time. And even my business, right? I was in mortgage banking for 27 years, and then I started my own company doing leadership executive coaching. And there were times that I noticed, I'm like, oh, I'm even saying like, this is hard. I got to find clients. I'm trying to get in front of audiences or whatever, and I was like, that's below the line. I'm doing it myself. And I would catch myself. So does that help answer your question?
Oh, definitely, for sure. I'm sure that we all end up in that place at one point or another, maybe even every day. You wake up in the morning and the first thing you're like, ugh, another day, right? And so it's so important to start from that positive place right from the beginning, or you could end up in that negative below the line thinking for the entire day. So that's great feedback. Suha, did you have any?
Well, I was going to follow up on this. So if we find ourselves falling into this, I can't, I won't, it's hard, I'm swamped. What are some of the things that we could do to stop and sort of pivot our thinking, change? I know for me, sometimes I just stop and just start breathing. That's something that you taught me, Bronwyn. When you and I have spoken, it's like we always started our conversation with, okay, let's just breathe for a couple of minutes. Yes. What other tips would you suggest? Because like Leora said, we all find ourselves going down that rabbit hole sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. Well, the breathing is such a good one. How many times a day do we even consciously think about taking a breath or two? And it takes 30 seconds, just to pause. That first little thing can just get us a little bit out of our head, because the thing is that we're like all in this cerebral place up here. Or it could even be like, okay, I'm just going to literally put my hand on my heart for a moment, just to like get more grounded into our physical body. And it kind of breaks that chain reaction of the neural pathways we've created in our mind that are getting deeper and deeper and deeper into these habits of being below the line. So little things that we can do to kind of nip it in the bud, like break that pathway, is really important. And I'll come back to what you're saying, but what I would say is, because of where we've been for the last year, with Corona and being at home, going from our bedroom in the morning to grab a cup of coffee to our office in the living room, and then back to our bedroom and maybe to the bathroom, like we got to start thinking out of the box. We got to start doing things a little bit differently, because we are really getting like deep habitual grooves of not thinking differently. And what I'm sharing with you guys today is we need to think differently. So if we can pause and say, okay, how do I come up with a different solution here? Like, let me just stop myself for a minute and say, okay, wait a minute, there's another way. That can also interrupt it. And I'd say one of the most powerful things to do is, this is for coaching, is you need to have somebody who can help hold you accountable, who can continue, because we jump back into those grooves really easily, or a kind of accountability partner. Like, I'd love it if you guys could play with this with each other. Like, oh, I noticed that I was below the line, and I'm just gonna, give Suha a call and say, how do I think about this in a different way? Because I'm noticing that I'm really being Darth Vader here. And just
it's funny because her and I already do that. So we often bounce text messages, because I'm in California and she's in Florida. So but there have been nights when we're texting late at night, and it's the same kind of things, like I need your guidance, I need your input, I'm going to give you this scenario, what's your perspective? So I think that is just a great advice, that you need to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, but someone who's going to call you out when you're being ridiculous or in that negative
And she
space.
does. Let me tell you,
and so do
she
you. So, like it's those are those true partnerships that you need in life. Those people who will be there when you need them, but will lift you up, but will also tell you when you're just being silly and being in that negative place, and you just to help get you out of that. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, Bronwyn, about that we need to interrupt it and finding something that helps us do that, whether it's, taking a stop, pausing, taking a deep breath. I love the put your hand on your heart and actually feel your heartbeat, because that really grounds you and puts you in that moment, which sometimes we get to lose and not realize that we're caught up in something that's just going to keep taking us down that rabbit hole. And if we just pause and reset, we may be able to just think differently, like you said, and get out of it and change our perspective. So that's really powerful. And I'm seeing somebody commenting saying that's powerful.
And it's interesting because a lot of those tips and tools that you're mentioning are tools that I use because I suffer from anxiety and panic disorder, have for years. And there are periods of time where it's really, really bad. And I do the same thing. It's those grounding techniques and breathing. Sometimes I realize I'm not breathing right, or I start to get the tunnel vision. I'm like, anxiety is coming, panic is coming, and I have to quickly pivot, and I do those same things. I go for a walk, I take deep breaths and conscious breaths and meaningful breaths, and I do the same thing where I'm like, I don't like when I feel my heartbeat that much, and so I try to come up with different ways to reframe my brain. So it's amazing that those are the same tools that we can use to stay out of that below the line thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And when you were just saying that, and that just came off the top of my head, I was like, wow, I'm going to do that. Another quick way to think about, when I was talking about Darth Vader and Yoda, if people are like not into Star Wars, or like, who is Star Wars? Because we hopefully have some younger people on the call. Is it's really fear versus love, right? It's like a more loving place up here, loving of ourselves, loving of everyone around us, loving of the industry, loving of the borrowers, loving, like that's where it's coming from. So how can I come up with a solution that's more from that space of like being of service and being helpful, right? And that's the kind of leadership that I love to help people groom into. When Eddie and I were talking about that earlier, is like the high potential, there's so much around that, is like, that's the work right there. And it's fun, right? That's coming from above the line, because you don't be like, oh, that's challenging. It's really fun.
So can you dig deeper into what you feel it means to live intentionally? I know that's another one of your I wouldn't call them taglines, but one of your defining themes is living intentionally. Can you expand on that a little bit and how it ties into living above the line?
Yeah, it definitely does, right? Because what we're talking about, even that pause, is an intentional way. So when I think of intentionality, and there can be some people actually think of intentional thinking as a negative sometimes. I heard somebody say this the other day, and it kind of surprised me, because I think of it as something very above the line. But they said that people can use it as an excuse. So I just want to redefine it in the way that I think about it. But when I say they use it as an excuse, if somebody misses a meeting, or they're late, or they drop the ball on a deadline for a project they have to do, and they're like, oh, it wasn't, or they say something nasty in a meeting, that happens. People, like, their stuff comes out. They could use this phrase of intentionality to be like, oh, it wasn't my intention to hurt you, or to say that meanly. It's a little bit like, it's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about intentionality, because I heard somebody saying like, oh, I kind of avoid that word. And I was like, really? Tell me more. So when I think of it as being intentional throughout the day. Like when we say like, when I start to notice that I'm approaching something from fear, I'm going to intentionally pause, right? Put my hand on my heart or take a deep breath. And it can be kind of I want to say ritualistic, which can also, people are like, oh, witches and whatever, spirits. No, it's really just, it's just getting out of the headspace, right? And doing things with more purpose and meaning. So as an example, it could be like as simple as washing the dishes. You know, we can be mindlessly washing the dishes and super upset, which I was doing last night because I was like, why am I doing the dishes? I cook a meal, my daughter's upstairs, my husband's drinking a beer on the couch. Like, what?
Involved in there.
Right? But then I was, or I could be intentionally in purpose. Like I'm clearing this space, I'm cleaning these dishes, I'm feeling the warm water on my hands and the soap. And I'm just being almost in a meditative space around washing the dishes, right? And that is more, I was very intentional then. And I decided to come from a different above the line space. It happened instantly. I was like, oh, that's funny. I'm like bitching about it. But how can we do that all day long? How can we be really intentional with everything that we do? And I work with my clients a lot on this. We don't think oftentimes about the future of how we want things to go. So here's an example. You might have a meeting this afternoon, right? A lot of people have a meeting this afternoon, and you might be running the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, before you walk in, you pause, you take a deep breath, and you get really clear about, what do I want the people in that room to walk away knowing, feeling, or thinking at the end of my meeting? What's the roadmap, right? Where are we going here? And getting really, really clear about it. That will make the meeting go in a completely different direction. We walk in meetings and we really we have an agenda, or maybe we think of things we want to talk about. Sometimes they get railroaded, right? We go off on tangents and we're like, nope, bring it back. But if we're really intentional about, what do I want to create in this meeting, and what's going to happen by the end of this 60 minutes, and we can say that out loud going into a meeting, like, here's what you will know at the end of our time together today. Very clear leadership, right? That's a glimpse into when I'm talking about being very intentional about everything and how it applies to our day-to-day at work. Is that helpful?
That's fantastic. Yeah, I can't tell you how many meetings I've gone in and left going, we accomplished absolutely nothing in that meeting.
Yeah,
and it's
what
because,
were we here for?
Right. And it's because people don't go in prepared, or they allow the derailments to take place and they don't stay on task. And so, I mean, again, it's coming from that place of intentionality and purpose. Like, you need to go in with a game plan, and you need to have, you're in this meeting to solve for something, and you need to leave this meeting having solved for whatever it is you're trying to solve. So absolutely love that. I'm all for purposeful meetings. Let's make that happen. 2021 purposeful meetings.
I mean, for me, the word intention or intentional, it holds a lot of meaning, because that's actually my word for 2021. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's actually on my bracelet,
so
that
so
I do
cool.
not forget it. I look at this every single day because I want to live an intentional life. I want to make sure that the life I'm living, what I'm doing every day, is serving a purpose that I have in my mind. And I don't know if you can see behind me, way back there is my vision board, actually. And I see it every single day because I want to be intentional. I want to do things that have purpose and meanings. And I think it's really important for people not to go every day just living their life, waking up, doing whatever they need to do, and then go to bed, and they're not serving what purpose they want to do. And so I think it's really, I love the fact that that's part of your leadership discussion, that's where you lead those, those executives and other people that you're coaching, because it's very important, I think.
It is. It's really important. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like one of the big things that I want to help is, is one, we talked about this the other day when we were talking about today, is intentionally getting different people to the C-suite table, right? Women, LGBTQ, people of color, different perspectives. That's why I was like, we got to get out of our old habit and then thinking about things in a different way. And that's how we do it. But the other thing is what you just touched on, which is so beautiful, which is what drives me kind of crazy is that we are living life as if it's never going to end, right? And we're like, oh, someday I'm going to do that. I have this idea. And we kind of are just going through the motions. Yeah. But like, there's no time to waste. We need to embrace our brilliance now. Now. And I get so passionate when I talk about that, because that's what I did when, trust me, it was really scary when my job disappeared 4 years ago. And I was like, what am I going to do? I've been in mortgage banking for 27 years. Well, I still am, but I'm doing something that I'm so passionate about. I love what I do. And I want everyone to feel the same way that I do and be excited about every day.
I love what you said, that we have to embrace our brilliance now. And I'm actually typing some of this stuff in the chat so people can see it and maybe capture it as well. And one of the things, both Leora and I were very lucky when we had our annual conference. One of our speakers said something that has also stuck with me, and it's actually on my vision board, that says, turn one day into day one, as opposed to thinking of one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do this. Turn it into day one. Today is the first day where you are doing this, where you start this. And that takes that intentionality to the next level, I think.
Yes. Yeah. 100% agree. I love that. That's so great. I'm going to write that one down too.
So, Bron, when we chatted earlier this week, you had mentioned the leadership ladder, and I'm very intrigued by this concept of the leadership ladder. So, a lot of the leaders here at EPM are new leaders, and a lot of them are relatively young compared to some other leaders in our industry. So, I think that there might be some great feedback that they can take away from this concept. So, can you dig into that a little bit?
And I have some tips for some leaders and a question I want to ask people to maybe type in the chat too. So, so the leadership ladder is, it's along the lines of above the line or below the line. So when I work with my clients, I do a leadership assessment with them to see where they show up with their perceptions, attitudes, and beliefs and thoughts towards anything, right? And so and there's a whole spectrum. When I'm talking about above the line or below the line, I'm really simplifying the ladder. So the ladder is like, at the very bottom of the ladder is like, we're in a victim mode, woe is me, something's wrong with me, and we're hard on ourselves. And then from there, it goes into kind of I want to say, it's my way or the highway type of thing, a fighter mode. And just really being honest here, in corporate America, most managers come from a level 2, the second rung, which is this fight or flight, what I call is a command and a control type of leadership, because they, there isn't a lot of leadership training that happens to have them think about things in a different way. And they're often promoted, because they're good salesperson, but they're not necessarily a good leader. Like, they actually probably have no idea how to be a leader, because we don't do that type of training very often within organizations. How do we groom these people to start thinking about things in a different way? And then it moves up these 7 levels, this leadership ladder. It goes into then being more in a partnership type of place, more collaborative. We get into supporting other people. Then we get into more being a creator. And at the very top, it's creator and being a visionary, thinking big picture, thinking way outside of the box, thinking about more than just yourself, your organization, which is really where this is all coming from. Like I pointed to, is this platform is thinking outside of not just your organization, but thinking outside of the industry, like just the mortgage industry, right? There might be real estate agents on here, or vendors, or, you know, it's like, how do we just be bigger? So that's what I'm talking about. And I work with people because I can see, and we create a common language through this assessment, I can see where they might get stuck down here, and tools and things that they can work on in order to have them move up and think about leadership in a different way. So one of the things that that I want to ask, and maybe people can type into the chat, especially if you're a new leader, is this question that I ask people at the beginning of some of my programs, which is, well, who do you want to be as a leader? And I'm going to ask you two to answer that too. Who do you want to be as a leader? We don't.
Suha, you can go first.
I was never a Steve Jobs fan. I have to admit, I'm not an Apple person. I've never been an Apple person. And it really wasn't until I saw a video of him, of someone who heckled him at a conference, and the way he responded and the way he addressed the issue that the person had brought up, and then how he took it above the line, to use your language, and showed what a visionary he is. There are some people like that. Richard Branson is like that as well, where they see that bigger picture. They see how they can improve humanity, not just their own organization. That's the type of leader I want to be. I want to have an impact. I want to leave a legacy. I want somebody to think back and go, Suha was phenomenal. Suha was like Steve Jobs or like Richard Branson. She had that visionary thought that took her to the next level. Yeah. That's the type of leader I want to be.
Love that.
How am I supposed to follow that?
You asked me to go first. It's not my problem.
This is true. I'm going to accept my response. Yeah, I will own that. I shouldn't. No. For me, I've always led from a place of love and empathy, and I don't want to change that. People have tried to change that in me, and I actually had a job where I succumbed to that, where I was told, you need to stop being that kind of leader, because that you need to lead with an iron fist, you need to micromanage, you need to be on top of your people, you need to be able to know exactly what they're doing at any given moment. I prefer to put my trust and faith in my team that they're going to do what they need to do without me being all over them all the time. And I come from that place of love and empathy, that we are all human beings. We all have struggles. We are all here for a greater purpose. And that's the kind of leader that I want to be. I want to be that human. I want to that people can come to and see that I'm not just a leader. I'm I guess a visionary, but just I am myself in my authentic place. And if I'm that way, then I know that my team can also be that, without fear, without judgment, without worry that they'll be persecuted for their ideas or how they feel.
Yeah,
I love that.
Both of those are so beautiful. There's no right or wrong answer, right? And it's interesting because you just said something that reminded me of a situation where I was working with I think he was a senior VP at the time, and I was supporting him on an account. And I remember we walked out of a movie, and I'll just say it, he ripped me a new one. He's like, one of your problems is that you wear your heart on your sleeve. And I was like, okay, I got to show up like a robot. I really remember this so clearly, being like, oh, okay, like, I guess I can't do this. You're right. We're in corporate America. And I realized, I was like, that's who I am.
You have to be authentic.
Exactly.
You have to be authentic.
I'm a heart-centered leader. I think that's the way to go. He was coming from command and control. Yeah. Like, right, he was coming down here, and I, it was a couple years that I was really struck by that. And And you just reminded me, I was like, wow, that was really interesting comment to make. And it tells you where that person was coming from. And then I was watching the interview last night on Empower with Marsha and Christy Furco.
I love her.
That
I
was
love
such a
both of
great-
them, but yeah, that was fantastic.
And a lot of I've heard her and Marsha and a lot of other women that are, like in the C-suite of our industry, which we need more, talking about authenticity, vulnerability. That was what you were just talking about. And also Christy was pointing to something also that's very important, which was she was talking about working through a challenge that she had been struggling with and didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until she collaborated with these women, like on the rooftop with a glass of champagne, and said, here's what I'm struggling with. What do you guys think? And they started to collaborate and brainstorm ideas. It's also that, right? It's like, we don't have to do it alone. Being at the top, like being at the top can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
And then
just because we're leaders doesn't mean we don't have room to grow, doesn't mean we don't have all the answers, but it's not always easy asking for help, because you're pre-wired to think, oh, I'm in this space, and if it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, then I'm going to be, it's that whole imposter syndrome. It's like, oh gosh, they're going to find out I'm a fraud and that I don't belong here. And that's not the case at all. We're all dealing, like I said, we all have our struggles, and we all have areas where we're not the superstar subject matter expert. And that's why we need to call on our tribe to help us out sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
At all. No. And I love what you said about authenticity and vulnerability. I mean, and I think if you just look at some of our social media platforms, LinkedIn, for example, where that has really transformed from being so business oriented and professional, everybody on there now has opened up. And whether it's because of COVID and Corona, and we're all working from home, and we want to share our struggles and our challenges with everybody. And it's almost like you have a tribe right there who's ready to help you. Yeah. Only if you when you're ready to show yourself and the struggles that you're having. And I think that's, for me, I think it's wonderful. I've certainly
we did that lip sync duel on LinkedIn. Like, that's not something I would have done a year ago. It's just ridiculous, but it shows, oh, they're normal human beings like the rest of us, and they're goofy and silly, and they're just trying to get through this pandemic like we all are. But if you guys want a good laugh, go check out our lip sync duels on LinkedIn, because I'm not posting that on Facebook. It's done.
Go ahead. Sorry, Bronwyn.
I said we need to have more fun. We take ourselves really seriously, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I see that we're starting to get some questions on the chat, and I want to make sure that we're giving people an opportunity. So our first question, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to switch to that, comes from Clarence, and he asks, how do you get into the leadership when you are mostly promoted for great production and not on the person? So I think what he's asking is, it's not that the person is a good leader, but they're promoted because they are good in sales, like you said.
Yeah. So they're good in sales, right? And obviously they're seen as having high potential as a leader. Otherwise they wouldn't be tapped on the shoulder to do this. But there's work that you can do on yourself as a leader, a potential leader. Whether that's through, I have a program that I do for leaders that are up and coming, and it's a little bit different than the aspect of like Future Leaders with the MBA, which is also a great program. We were talking about that earlier. Because one of the things that I believe in is when we are stepping into a new leadership role, something that's really important, and the first thing we need to start doing is being a leaders for ourselves, right? So looking at our integrity, looking at our communication, looking at our own confidence levels, right? Looking at the respect we have between other people and ourselves, and looking at this definition of what does success mean to me? What does leadership mean to me? Who am I as a leader? Pondering those types of questions are really the places to start. And I have this program that I do that has 5 modules where I walk people through, like, really going deep into getting clear about who they are and who they want to be as a leader.
It just goes right back to intentionality. I love that. Just
Yeah.
coming from that place of intention. And really that, I mean, what I did is in 2018, I wrote an article for Mortgage Women magazine called 2019, the Year of Me. And I had lost my job in 2018 because, again, I was not coming from my authentic place because I was afraid of getting fired, ended up getting fired anyway. And so in 2019, I decided 2019 was going to be the year of me. And I spent the entire year investing in myself and focusing on making myself a better version of myself. And the rewards have been tremendous. And it was just me coming from that place of internal purpose. And so that's the advice that I would give is start with yourself and invest in yourself. And as you go through that exercise, you'll start to learn more about really what your true purpose is. And it may not be what you think it is. And being open to those possibilities and those changes in thought is just an amazing experience. It's terrifying, but also an amazing experience.
Yes, it is terrifying when you start to peel the layers of who you truly are and getting in touch with your person, because that, the face that we show everybody is very different sometimes than when we are one-on-one with ourselves. And
Yeah.
until you actually get to know and really like who you are, I don't think you can succeed in becoming a better leader.
Yeah.
Because you have to show that authenticity, and that comes from knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. And I'll throw out there, and for Clarence, well, first of all, reach out to me and we can have a conversation, because you might be sitting there going like, I don't even know what you're like, where to go. Like, what are you talking about? Right. And there is a path. And obviously, you guys have been working on yourself, but a lot of people don't, like, they don't have the same level of awareness around self-leadership. And if you think about it, like, it absolutely has to start there.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you are doing it from an inauthentic place. So
when you're doing it for someone else and not for yourself.
Bronwyn, do you mind if I share your LinkedIn profile
I would,
URL, and that way people in the chat and people can then find you? That would be a good way for them to connect with you.
yeah, and you know what? I will even share my email and my website too.
Okay. All right.
So we do have we have another question. So this is from marketing. This is probably Eric or LA.
Actually, Vera is also asking that question, the same question.
Okay, what is some advice you were given that has always stuck with you? And this was a question for all three of us, but go ahead, Bron.
Some advice that was given to me that has always stuck with me. Okay. So, and this is one of the things that I work on in this program, which is starting to create, when I was saying create confidence and good communication, those are important things. But part of this aspect of creating self-leadership is creating, trusting our own intuition and our own inner wisdom and our own guidance, right? And so I had a leader that I worked for way back when I used to work at PMI, who's such a huge influence on my life. Her name was Linda Baker. A lot of people know her, and she was amazing. And she would really help us with starting to look at our own confidence, stepping up, playing bigger in our lives, looking at how do I be a better version of me. And still to this day, unfortunately, we lost Linda 6 years ago. She was way too young to leave, but she is gone. And there are often times when I'm in a situation where I'm like, I'm not sure exactly what to do here. And so I just pause for a minute and I just think, what would Linda do? What would Linda do in this situation? To tap into my own inner wisdom. And oftentimes I'll get ideas or insights, or it might be like, I need to reach out to Suha to ask her because she might have a different idea than I do, right? Back to asking other people and collaborating with help. I mean, I talked about how I coach people, but I have my own coach. I have my own coaching group, and I have an accountability partner I talk to every Tuesday morning at 6:30 Pacific, 7:30 Mountain Time, every single week, every week. And we talk about our goals and our visions. And she sometimes gives me advice and feedback because I can't see it because I'm a fish in water myself, can't see my own stuff. So I hope that answered the question. Did it?
So for me, I would say that the advice that's always stuck with me is I had a friend who once told me, you don't need someone else's permission to find your own happiness.
Wow.
And that's just stuck with me. And I'm not going to add any more to that because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So
for me, it was, and this is from when I lived overseas, actually, and he was a phenomenal boss. He was anyway, the advice that I got was, if you want something that you've never had, you always have to try something new. If you don't try anything new, you're just going to be stuck in the same place. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but basically, and that has stuck with me always, that if I want what I don't have, I'm going to have to do something different, because if I continue to do the same thing, I'm still not going to have it. Yeah. And it stuck with me so much that I actually have it on my wall up here. I have it framed, that it says that, because I always want to remember it as well. It's one of those things that always grounds me and reminds me of the journey that I've been on, because that's something really important for any of us, regardless of where we are in our career, in our chosen path. We have to remember where we started to know where we are now. You were talking about when you were 16 and the experience that you had. When I was 16, I was leaving a war-torn country, flying to the US on my own to start college. That's an experience that has always stuck with me. That's something that I will never forget. And so it's these defining moments that help us grow and evolve. And I think, the lessons that we get, and I don't think it's one thing that we get from one person. Many people come into our lives and give us advice that will stick with us. And there are some things that they tell us that really you go, no, that's actually, that's not even worth the paper it's written on. So
everything is a lesson, right? Every experience is a lesson. Yeah.
Exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to go down that path.
We're already out of time. So I know it's kind of a bummer, but thank you so much, Bron, for your time today. So to all of the attendees, we did provide her LinkedIn link in the chat in addition to her email address. Yeah. And Bron, if there's anything you want to close us out with, the floor is yours.
Well, I'll say a couple things. Is one, if anyone wants to email me, I'll send a resource out about, some of the things we've been talking about today that could be really helpful. And then, if anyone's interested in having a conversation, I'd be open to that. I offered it to Clarence, but I just want to open that up. And so I don't want to be exclusive talking about that. And there's a couple ways people can engage with me. LinkedIn is a great one, or my social media platforms. And the 3 ways I really work with people are through either one-on-one coaching. I have a program starting June 1st called Be Blueprint, which is really about what we're talking about around self-leadership into leadership. And then this summer, I'm going to be doing something that I'm super scared to death about and excited about, which is a leadership vision quest. And that's taking people into the wilderness near Vail. And there's going to be
I'm down. Sign me up.
That sounds awesome.
Rustic luxury, like nice and hut and hiking. So
glamping. I'm loving it. Let's do it.
I have a wait list. I'm taking applications for that because I'm going to be super exclusive on that one. Sorry, you can't take 400 people.
No, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I see we've been joined by Eric.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just coming on to say thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you guys all coming on, taking time out of your busy schedules to share and enlighten us all. So thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you always. And definitely you hit the nail on the head in regards to different advice. We all have different things coming in our ears on all sides as, new leaders, as leaders who've been in the, industry for a while. And so we're all growing at different rates, but you can't just focus on what other people are doing. You kind of have to focus on your journey too. So thank you so much for everything. And that's it. So we'll also be putting together this into communication going out. So thank you so much. And you'll get all this recorded and you can rewatch it 100,000 times. So have a great day. Thank you so much. And happy
Thank
John.
you,
everyone.
Bronwyn. Thank you so
Happy
much.
Friday.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.